What if everything you've been taught about avoiding pain is backwards? Fire, what if the very struggles you've been running from are actually the mechanism your character needs to transform? The ancient Stoics didn't see suffering as something to escape. They saw it as a forge. And once you understand why, your relationship with adversity changes forever. 2,000 years ago, Seneca, one of Rome's most powerful philosophers and advisors to the emperor, wrote something radical. A gem cannot be polished without friction, nor a man perfected without trials. This was an abstract theory. Seneca lived it. He was wealthy, influential, surrounded by luxury. Yet he deliberately practiced discomfort. He'd sleep on a hard bed, wear rough clothing, eat plain food. Why? Because he understood something most people miss today. Seneca knew that without resistance, there is no growth. A gem doesn't become brilliant in a vacuum. It requires friction, pressure, the cutting wheel against its surface. The gem doesn't enjoy the process. It doesn't thank the craftsman for the grinding. But when finished, it becomes something it could never have been alone. You understand this intellectually when applied to gems, but you resist it for yourself. What Seneca realized was that human beings are identical in this way. You don't become stronger by avoiding weight. You become stronger by lifting it. You don't develop courage by eliminating fear. You develop it by moving through fear anyway. You don't build resilience by having an easy life. You build it through difficulty you weathered and overcome. The discomfort isn't punishment. It's the cost of transformation. This is why Seneca, despite his wealth and status, voluntarily embraced hardship. He wasn't performing Stoicism for show. He was testing his philosophy. He was asking, if I lost everything tomorrow, would I survive? Would I still be myself? Will my character remain intact? By deliberately practicing deprivation, he answered that question in advance. And that preparation became his actual freedom. He couldn't be broken by loss because he'd already lived as if he had nothing. Marcus Aurelius ruled the Roman Empire at its height. Yet in his private journal, what we now call the Meditations, he returned again and again to one insight. The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. Round Pushpin noticed what he's saying. He's not saying obstacles are good. He's saying obstacles are the path. Not beside the path. Not despite the path. They are the path. Think about this practically. A river doesn't flow around a rock. The rock is what shapes the river's power. The water becomes faster, more directed, more useful precisely because of the obstruction. Remove the rock, and the river loses its force. A muscle doesn't grow from easy repetitions. It grows from the reps that challenge its limit. A child doesn't learn resilience from a comfortable childhood. They learn it from facing and overcoming difficulty within safe bounds. Marcus understood that most people frame obstacles as interruptions to the path. I want to build a business, but the market is tough. I want to be healthy, but I have no time. I want to learn, but I don't have resources. The obstacle becomes the excuse. But Marcus flipped this. What if the tough market is the condition that forces you to innovate? What if the time scarcity is what teaches you efficiency? What if limited resources are what sparks creativity? A modern example illuminates this. Reid Hoffman, the LinkedIn founder, talks about starting his first company with almost no funding. Every constraint forced him to think differently. He couldn't outspend competitors, so he outstrategized them. The limitation became his competitive advantage. Years later, when he had unlimited resources, he had to consciously remember what made him sharp. The obstacle had been the teacher, and he almost paid to remove the very thing that had forged his excellence. Here's where it becomes actionable. Seneca said, difficulties strengthen the mind, as labor does the body. Flex biceps, just as you wouldn't expect strong muscle from avoiding the gym, you shouldn't expect a strong mind from avoiding challenge. But how do you actually apply this? How do you stop just understanding it and start living it? First, Reframe what's happening around you right now. You're facing something difficult, a project that's harder than expected, a relationship requiring courage, a goal that demands growth. Your mind wants to avoid it. That's normal. That's biology. But the Stoic practice is to pause and recognize, this is the specific friction I need. This is my gem being polished. This is the rock that shapes my river. This difficulty is not a mistake in my life. It's the mechanism of my development. Second, practice deliberately. Don't wait for difficulty to find you. The Stoics called this premeditatio malorum, negative visualization. Once a week, spend 10 minutes imagining losing something you value. Not to be depressed, but to prepare mentally. If you lost your job, could you recover? If someone criticized your work, could you stay grounded? If you failed at something important, could you try again? By rehearsing difficulty mentally, you build the psychological muscle before the actual test arrives. Third, embrace small friction intentionally. Cold showers, fasting occasionally, sleeping without comfort, taking the harder path when an easier one exists. These aren't punishments, they're training. When you voluntarily endure minor discomfort, you become someone who doesn't panic when actual adversity arrives. A Navy SEAL trainee doesn't wait for combat to discover whether they can handle physical stress. They experience stress regularly in training. Your daily practice should work the same way. Fourth, examine your language. Notice when you say, "Why is this happening to me?" and replace it with, "What is this teaching me? What strength am I developing here? What perspective am I gaining?" This isn't toxic positivity. You're not pretending the difficulty is fun. You're shifting from victim to student. The difficulty remains the same. Your relationship to it transforms. And that transformation is everything. Finally, remember that the Stoics weren't masochists. They didn't seek suffering for its own sake, but they understood that growth and suffering are inseparable in this world. You can't have character without trials. You can't have strength without resistance. You can't have depth without challenge. So when difficulty comes, and it will, you have a choice. You can see it as a random misfortune interrupting your life, or you can see it as the exact friction your character needs right now. One perspective will break you. The other will build you. The ancient Stoics weren't trying to escape the human condition. They were trying to master it, and they discovered something we keep forgetting. The obstacle isn't something separate from your growth. It is your growth. The difficulty you're facing right now, it's your gem being polished. Stop running from it. Stop waiting for the comfortable path. The comfortable path doesn't lead anywhere meaningful. If this resonated with you, if you felt something shift in how you see your current struggle, subscribe for weekly Stoic wisdom that actually changes how you live. Leave a comment. What difficulty in your life right now could you reframe as you're polishing? What obstacle could become your way? I read every comment, and I'd like to hear your story.